What's good, friends list, episode 66 of the Gamecast coming at you. The Xbox Series X is starting to make its way out into the wild, and we now have our first impressions of Microsoft's next-gen powerhouse. So, this week, we examine and digest all of the details surrounding the features Microsoft has been promising to its players for the better part of a year. Are load times as blazing fast as promised? Is Quick Resume as snappy and instant as advertised? How does transferring large-scale data, such as games, work in practicality with the system? We dig through it all in hopes of setting the table properly for the big day on November 10th. Also, new reports indicate that mandatory 6-day work weeks have hit CD Projekt Red as Cyberpunk 2077 heads towards November 19th launch. Yet, it puts the spotlight on one of the industry's biggest issues: crunch. Does launching within the holiday shopping season to boost sales to an already expected juggernaut of a game justify the additional time away from home for the development team? Is unionization truly possible within game development? All of this and much more on the newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Budget.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around those damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. I'm your host, as always, Travis White, aka Traveless on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Mike P. Pack. Mike, what's good? What's going on? What have you been playing, man? What's happening in the world of Mike P. Pack this week?
Oh,
I guess I should, the PG version, I guess, maybe.
Hi, demons. It's your boy. I basically, steady diet of the same old same. Actually, I still, have been playing a little bit of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, but not a whole lot because I 100%ed the first game or whatever, and then I was getting pretty close to 100%ing the second. So I kind of just slowed down a little bit because I don't want to completely burn the game out, you know what I mean? But I just been playing a little bit of Halo, Master Chief Collection still, with a new hit reg update. It's been interesting, bit of a new experience just because the shots register so clean. So it's a lot different than before. And even like the Xbox 360 version, I feel like, it's about as good as you can get to land on Xbox 360. So I've been enjoying some of that. Alternatively, have also been mixing in some Ninja Gaiden Black back into my diet just because I'm trying to get a little bit back into form for, working on some speed runs, trying to get my times down on that. So been working on that. And also, this week's a little crazy because I've been playing, a lot of different stuff. So I've also been mixing some Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition back in my diet, just specifically because I love the game. I've played it ever since I was a kid. More importantly, their monthly updates have just been stellar. They've been really adding a lot of good stuff to the game. They've been working on a lot of the shit that was wrong with it. Because even, upon release, there was some stuff wrong with it. But people played it because it had a matchmaking system, which is the first ever. Because before you had to go on a third-party software called Voobly and find matches, and it could be tricky. And then alternatively, people have just been kind of playing it because it's DE, and there's been a lot of the esports scene has been, growing again, and there's Red Bull tournaments, and there's this and there's that going on. So a lot of people have been playing it, and it's been gaining in popularity, which is really cool because it's a really awesome game, and I'm glad that it's getting its due. But yeah, so that's what I've been playing. I've actually been playing quite a lot. How about you, Travis? What have you been playing?
Well, a couple of things. At least whenever we're talking about Xbox PC, that ecosystem. I finally finished Tell Me Why. My fiance and I sat down last night, actually, because I said...
Ain't nothing but a heartache?
Yeah, literally, for the past, what, now 2 weeks, this third week now that I've been saying, yeah, I'll get to it. Yeah, I'll finish it. I want to make sure I'm done so I can talk about it. Literally last night I was like, fuck. If I don't finish it, like, tonight, like, if we don't sit down and play it together tonight, like, it's not getting done for a week, and I'm not going to put it off another week. Like, it's either I finish it now or I don't. And that's no, like, and that's no detriment to the game or anything like that, because, like, full stop, great game. I really enjoyed the narrative, like I've talked about before. It overall is a game with an important message. It's, tackles a lot of real world subjects that, hey, may not be the most glamorous thing to sit down and talk about trans rights, talk about, the LGBTQ community, things like that aren't always easy conversations to have, but are appreciated nonetheless because they are important to have and, are important issues to, talk about and, get on the same page about and everything like that. So, the game overall, I think, balances both that narrative and the actual plot of it itself. And, at the end of the day, I don't think the narrative completely stacks up to, Life is Strange and the reasons why I love, or I shouldn't say that, but it doesn't stack up to Life is Strange, just because I think Life is Strange at this point has that pedigree that, gets, granted, Life is Strange also is usually traditionally, like a 5-part series each season, or I guess now they're, installments, if you want to call them. This being only 3, I felt the plot was sometimes rushed. I thought the payoff necessarily wasn't as impactful as I was hoping for, or just because it didn't go down the avenues that I was hoping it would in terms of what it was hinting at and the style of narrative it was, like the genre. It very much penned itself to be a sci-fi paranormal experience almost, and I don't think we got that at the end, which is fine because it's still a very good game. Like, if I had to put a number on it, it'd be like 7.5, if not a little bit higher maybe, and I think that's because the themes and how they're tackled and how they're handled and how they're woven into the narrative are super impactful, and are done very well, that I think that carries a lot of it and what made me really appreciate it, because it has that important message. But when I, stack it up to Don't Nod's back catalog of titles and their other IP that they have and whatnot, it just, to me, it doesn't ring home as much. But then again, I'm also a huge Life is Strange fan, and I may be a little too close to that franchise to look at to say, like, hey, this is my maybe biased opinion coming through, or maybe my, what's the phrase I'm looking for, I guess. I'm just so, innately attracted to that franchise and that IP that, maybe it just wouldn't live up to it in general if I wanted to. And that just may be one of those some subconscious things or whatnot. But overall, really great game. I absolutely, definitely recommend to play it. If you love the interactive narrative games, like a Telltale title, like, Quantic Dream titles like Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human and stuff like that, like David Cage games and stuff, just not as fucking wacky as David Cage in general. But point being, if you like experiences like that, this is for you. The other game that I did play that's in Xbox ecosystem, PC ecosystem, things like that, was my fiance and I finished A Way Out, the EA original Hazelight title that came out towards the end of 2018, I believe. But it's the one that you have to play in co-op, of 2 guys trying to get out of prison and basically restart their life and, clear their names and whatnot, and pull off this, heist to clear their names. And it's really, really what attracted me to it, and attracted a lot of people, I think, when it was revealed at E3 2018, I believe, that whenever it was revealed, it was focused on, no, you have to play this game co-op. And it isn't something that, hey, you gotta, I'm gonna carry us through all the way here. No, it's actually, like, granted, some things are QTE, experiences. Some things are just, moving one cart to another while the other person holds this, but it's cooperative nonetheless, and it forces that in a way that I think couch co-op has. It brings couch co-op to the forefront, because you could do it online, and they actually really enforce that. If you only one person has to have a copy of the game, which is great, because if you're
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so if you're, if you and I wanted to play it and you don't have a copy of the game and I have it on my Xbox or whatever, I could send you the invite for it and you could just download it and you could play it with me, as long as I own the game or you own the game, vice versa, whatever. So it's really great in that aspect, because it pushes to do the co-op experience more and more, but it definitely shines much more as a couch co-op experience. And it's not a very long game. It probably, realistically, we started it quite a while back, and it was one of those things that we started it, we liked it, we started watching something else, playing something else, whatever together, but it was always one of those games that her and I knew could play together, and that she wanted to play, so I'm always looking for those kind of experiences, because that gets me to play more video games. So, it's one of those easy, Trojan horse tactic type things, to get in and play more games, but we love playing games like that, and it's almost a good blend of walking sim third person and an interactive narrative, that it's not overtly hard to play, but it shines so much as a couch co-op game. And you could just see it with how the game is designed, how some of the, situations and scenarios you're put in, that if you're playing online, yeah, it probably could work, no problem, but sitting there next to somebody, being able to point and say, hey, yeah, go do this. No, you got to go over here, like, let me see your controller. Yeah, do it like this. Like, it just plays so well into leaning on your buddy, leaning on your partner, whoever that you're playing with. And the narrative's great. I really, really, really like the narrative. It's, one of those things, like I said, I would definitely put it at, if I had to put a number on it, an 8. I mean, I think the co-op aspect of it carries a little bit more than the narrative, but overall, I mean, Joseph Ferris, the director of it, has done so many great things with Hazelight, and I'm sure I don't know if you know him, Mike, but he's the guy from the video from the Game Awards who was like, fuck the Oscars. You know that guy?
Yes,
that's who that is. That's who that
nice.
is. He's the one who did this game. So, and he has another project coming out. What is it? God damn it. Now that's going to bug me really a lot. I can't think of it. I'm sure it'll hit me like while we're fucking, going through or doing whatever. Oh, here it is. It Takes Two. So it's another co-op experience that they're doing. So I'm excited for that, because I really did like this. I would say, like I said, an 8 or so. But overall, if you can, definitely play it. Definitely, grab your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, have them sit down with you. It's a great thing to try that way. Or your little brother, sister, cousin, whatever. It doesn't matter. Grab your buddy. That's a great experience to sit down, and even just somebody who doesn't traditionally play games can pick up and play, because it's not overtly difficult.
Right.
So, and there's a lot of good twists throughout the narrative does hold up. It isn't the strongest part of the game, but it definitely still does hold up. So, Mike, that being said, before I go too long and, too long in the tooth myself, let's head into Button Mash, because we have a fuck ton to talk about yet again today. Every week it seems like we get closer to these fucking next-gen launches, man. We're going to have more and more to talk about. So before we do that, let's get into Button Mash. We're going to go over some quick hit news articles and topics before we dive into our deep dive news coverage for the week. So, kicking it off here, Wasteland 3 developer In Exile Entertainment has 2 RPGs in the work, according to a tweet from studio head Brian Fargo. Fargo responded to a fan on Twitter over the weekend, noting that the studio was, quote, working on wonderful new RPGs, plural. It's too bad they take so long to make, Fargo's tweet ends. In a follow-up tweet, Fargo then clarified that the second of the 2 RPGs that In Exile Entertainment has in development is still, quote, in the infancy of pre-production, suggesting it is a long ways off. Microsoft has announced that EA Play will be arriving on Xbox consoles for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate members on November 10th, 2020, the same day as the launch of the Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S. As revealed on Xbox Wire, members with an Ultimate or Xbox Game Pass for PC subscription will also be able to download and play games from EA Play this December, although no specific date was given for the PC version of EA Play. EA has pulled an advertisement that marketed FIFA 21's FIFA Points microtransactions to children from the magazine the ad originally appeared in. A picture going around Twitter earlier this week showed a FIFA 21 advertisement in a children's toy magazine. Sounds innocent enough, but the advertisement was specifically marketed for the game's FIFA Points, which are in-game points purchased with real money to buy foot packs that every time I see that, as somebody who's played, Hockey Ultimate Team and shit like that, even saying hut and stuff like that doesn't really bug me, but every time I see the FIFA version of it, it's foot. It just fucking throws me off, I'm not gonna lie.
It's also arguably the one that people spend the most money on, actual money on, you know what I mean? Because of how good some of the soccer players are that they put in the game, you know what I mean?
Oh my god, 100%. I mean, hut's the same way too. Anyway, so before I get down that rabbit hole, which I'm sure we will in a couple minutes, to buy FUT packs that give players random virtual players to add to their dream team. In other words, you're spending real money on the chance to get a random virtual player in-game. That ad will be pulled from the magazine according to EA in a report from Eurogamer. Quote, "We take very seriously the responsibilities we have when marketing EA games and experiences in channels seen by children," EA told Eurogamer. Quote, "In spite of this, we're aware that advertising for FIFA Points has appeared in environments it shouldn't have. We have been working diligently with Smith's, the toy magazine that showcased this, to ensure this advertisement is not distributed in any remaining copies of their 2020 catalog." Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War has revealed its take on the returning zombie mode, a new story set alongside existing Zombies canon, featuring cross-generation, cross-platform play, battle pass integration, and more. The new Zombies map is titled Die Machine? I don't know. A location with, quote, "more than a nod to Nach der Untoten," the map that started it all. Taking place in the early 80s, the 4-player co-op mode stars Gregory Weaver, returning from the original Black Ops, leading a CIA-based team called Requiem as they explore an abandoned World War II bunker. Sticking on Call of Duty here, Activision reportedly banned over 20,000 Call of Duty Warzone cheaters as the game's Season 6 update began. A report from Vice, citing an EA spokesperson and, quote, "people familiar with the matter, say that the publisher issued a ban wave on Monday with some terminations related to the use of popular cheating programs called engine owning. The engine owning website now lists its Modern Warfare 2019 cheat as, quote, detected, suggesting that EA has successfully halted its use in-game, wiping the accounts of thousands of cheaters in the process. Thank fucking God, because that ruins that game. Bandai Namco has announced a new playable character for Scarlet Nexus, which was revealed at the third-party Xbox Series X gameplay reveal event, that one back in May that everyone kind of, rightfully so to agree, went down harshly on Xbox for kind of marketing a little bit weird, but it was revealed there. Looks really cool. It's really anime, but it is what it is. As well as several new members of the Other Suppressive Force, OSF, during a live stream broadcast as part of the Tokyo Game Show 2020. A new story trailer focusing on previously announced protagonist Yuioti Sumigari. I butchered that, and I'm really sorry. It was also revealed, showing flashbacks to his childhood when he was saved by the OSF and his interactions with his present-day teammates in battle. Rather than controlling both protagonists in one play, players choose between Sumigare or Sumerage. Names, man, they're hard. And Randall to experience the same story from different viewpoints. More details will be released at a later date. See, I could have went the boomer route and just been like, whatever happened to names like Bill and Ted? No, that's culturally insensitive, fuck that. The Xbox app on iOS is getting a major update, and one of the big new features is remote play. This is actually pretty big, given the whole situation with Apple right now. This will let Xbox One owners stream games from their console to their iOS device, similar to how the PlayStation 4 remote play feature works. Unlike xCloud, which streams games from remote data servers, the remote play feature for the Xbox app will only work with local Xbox One consoles that owners already have in their homes. You'll connect your Xbox to your smartphone over Wi-Fi or a data connection. This feature will let users play a game on their mobile devices while the main TV is occupied or something else, for example. The upcoming Beyond Light update for Destiny 2 will reduce the overall size of the game, but it requires a full reinstall. Bungie announced today that it has revamped Destiny 2's content bundling and patching pipeline for speed and install size in such a way that reduces the size of the game. This comes by way of a new build that calls content previously replaced or upgraded in prior patches, additional install size optimizations, and the movement of some of the game's content into a vault. All of this translates to a game that is smaller in file size by roughly 30 to 40%. That's actually a lot.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to kick it in before we end Button Mash here. We got to talk about games coming to Game Pass, first of all. Coming on October 1st, which is today when we're recording, and it'll already be, it's the 2nd when this comes out, so they're out right fucking now is what I'm trying to say. October 1st, Doom Eternal. We talked about that last week. That was one of the big things that came out of the Bethesda deal that was kind of thrown in as a little, sprinkles on top type of thing. That is out on console and Androids via xCloud, along with Drake Hollow on PC. On October 8th, Brutal Legend is coming to console. Forza Motorsport 7 is coming to all supported Game Pass devices. That's, console, PC, and Android. And then Iconfall is coming to console and PC, but not xCloud. Leaving Game Pass on October 15th, Felix the Reaper from console and PC, Metro 2033 Redo on console and PC, Minute on console and PC, Saints Row 4 Reelected on PC, and State of Mind on PC. So if you've ever interested in any of those games, make sure you jump on those because they're leaving later this month. And then finally, too, let's do a little review roundup before we roll out a Button Mash here. 2 big games launching this week. One that I'm excited about both of them, but one more so than other, and that's Star Wars Squadrons, currently sitting at an 81 on Metacritic. From VG247, they said this about Squadrons. Squadrons feels more like the sum of its parts. Most importantly, it does exactly what it sets out to do, and it does it very well indeed. It's EA's smallest scale console Star Wars title yet, but also its best. Fleet battles feel a little long and sometimes listless, and some will no doubt pine for a little more content. I personally would have really liked to see a 20-player or more deathmatch mode. But it's nevertheless difficult to really criticize such a tightly wound complete package. As such, it's an easy recommendation. I'm really excited about that game. I've been wanting a follow-up to Rogue Squadron, even something like, all the way back to X-Wing TIE Fighter, those games way back in the day. Those from the Pittsburgh area and, I guess Western Pennsylvania. Kennywood, man, they used to have the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter arcade machine there. Whew. I'd always stop there. My mom's like, why? My mom and dad would be like, dude, we're here to ride roller coaster. I'm like, dude, but I want to hop in that real quick. Just real quick. Let me give me $1. Let me get in there real quick. So I'm really excited about that. And then also Crash 4, It's About Time, is currently sitting at an 86 on Metacritic, which comes out tomorrow as well while you're listening to this. It's live. Go and buy it if you want. From Game Informer, they had this to say about it. In many ways, Crash 4, It's About Time feels like a game that shouldn't work. Single-player, mascot-driven, hardcore platformers are few and far between these days. Moreover, most franchises born in the mid-90s have had to continually reboot themselves to match the taste of the ever-changing market. At its core, Crash 4 remains rooted to the old ways of doing things, but that's not a bad thing. Visuals are cleaner now, and Crash has a few new gimmicks, but if you squint, Crash 4 looks like the same old platform you've always loved. So, it seems like it's getting back to the roots, which a lot of Crash fans seem to have wanted. So, Mike, with all of that said, before we head out of Button Mash, anything you want to tackle and talk about before we move on?
Yeah, I just want to kind of touch on just a few brief things, really. One of the biggest things that comes to, that comes to mind, sticks out to me from our Button Mash is specifically like the iOS Xbox app remote play thing. That is, significant. Like that's a pretty significant about face from their previous stance with the xCloud. Now I know it's still not like technically the xCloud service or whatever, but I still think it's worth noting that them being open to allowing people to potentially play their Xbox on their iOS, seems like it was going to be a who flinches first type thing. And it seems like Apple might have at least shown a little bit of a tendency to flinch here to Microsoft's, which is really cool because at the end of the day, I don't really care. My days of fighting over smartphone usage are long behind me. I really don't care what you use as far as a smartphone. But at the end of the day, I think we all just want gamers to be able to play their games on anything they can, especially if like Androids can play and Apple iPhones can't. That's a bit of a problem to me. So I'm not the biggest fan of that. Another thing that I was really interested in was the new Black Ops Cold War zombies. It's just interesting to hear that they finally are going to kind of give the zombies a little bit of their own campaign, which I feel like that's something that people have been pining for a long time. If you're
Mhm.
an old school zombies fan like me, I mean, there's too many hours spent. Maybe not so much on Nocturne and Toten like some of our friends, but specifically in Black Ops One, shit, me and Marshy used to play with our buddy Jake and then Zach Blows, and we used to play like, I mean, when we were on Christmas break that year that it came out, man, we would just play game after game on Kino Der Toten, and we would, basically play for 5-6 hours straight. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
people are gonna be like, "Oh, that's not that much time," but like,
When you're
it,
playing
it,
when you're
it
playing an
was.
experience like that, yes it is. Like, because usually you got to think the amount of time that you flub, one match that you set up and you'd only get like a couple of rounds. You're like, fuck, it only lasted 10 minutes. All right, start it back up again. And then there's some you're there for like fucking an hour. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah,
people
that
don't realize how many games. It's almost like the BR effect that, like, if you're sitting there and playing battle royales for like 6 hours, you've played a lot of fucking games in that day.
yeah, and
So,
to us, I mean, we would just, people would have to go to the bathroom. We would make the last zombie a crawler, and then like, we would entertain them while one of us had to go to the bathroom or whatever we had
yeah.
to do. You know what I mean? So that was a lot of fun, and I'm just happy to see that it's going to get another flavor, because at the end of the day, zombies now is something that I could pick up and play like one round of,
hmm
but after that it just kind of gets tiresome. So that's really cool to see that. The Destiny 2 update is actually kind of a big deal, just
hmm
specifically because it really starts trying to save people hard drive space. Because that's something that I was even running into when I was considering reinstalling Warzone. Was like,
hmm
holy shit, I actually have to make hard drive space because it's so fucking big. So
Yeah.
that's really cool that they're trying to condense that. And also, just real quick, the last thing I do want to cover is, or at least give my opinion on, is the new Crash Bandicoot that's coming out.
hmm
I
You're a
enjoy.
big Crash fan. I was gonna say.
I've always been a big Crash
hmm
fan, and to me, I am certainly respectful of the review of Metacritic saying that maybe it's a little outdated and they're
hmm
unsure how it's going to work. But at the end of the day, I think when it comes to Mario and Sonic and Crash, I think those games are just meant to be platformers, and they're
hmm
always going to harken back to old fans and even kids. Like, kids
hmm
today are still going to enjoy those types of games because they're just so simple, so easy to get into. You know what I mean?
hmm
So I think it's really cool, and I'm excited to get my hands on it. Probably won't be Friday, um, but after the next payday, I'll probably get my hands on it and give it a whirl. We'll see though. Maybe tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. I
Yeah.
might get frisky and want to stream it. So I don't know.
Well, that'd be a good game to stream. Even, I mean, the original. Well, I shouldn't say the original, but the first Crash re-release, doing the Insane trilogy. Picking that up really in 2017, like when it came out and stuff, coming out at a $40 price point. I'm not actually sure. I think that I would imagine that Crash is at a $60 price point, this one at least. But that game coming out at a $40 price point when it did, yeah, it's a $60 price point. So the new one is a full price $60. But the remakes coming out, like, and getting all of those for $40 and them being so fucking good, but also so fucking faithful, and seeing, and we kind of talked about it last week, even when we were talking about Tony Hawk, that you could tell once that came out, people were ready for an experience like that again, having access to a 90s mascot platformer experience that, Mario had traditionally shied away from. Now it was going more, 2.5D, if not full 3D isometric, to even 3D sandbox with, Mario Odyssey and whatnot. So the traditional form of Mario even kind of shied away from that, and you weren't having these experiences. The indie scene was filling those experiences. Look at now, you see, a Celeste, you see Shovel Knight, things like that are, have run away with, all of these great accolades with them, but that AAA third party high level polished experience that you're getting from, a large scale budget platformer that you would usually find in the 90s, a la Naughty Dog's version of Crash Bandicoot, you're just not seeing anymore. And people were ready to have something like that. And when it came out, I think, you saw the wheels turning in Activision's head, like, oh shit, this one makes us a fuck ton of money because people are buying this up. It sold very well. But also, too, man, if we invest money into this and it's good and it's not a cheap cash-in or it's not a fucking Skylanders, knockoff bullshit, people actually will buy it and they like it and they'll want more of it. And, having somebody like Toys for Bob who developed it and who went and developed the Spyro remastered trilogy last year, or that was the year before? I think it was last year. But having that team go in who has kind of cut their teeth doing an experience like this, going in and remaking a game while also keeping it very faithful to the original, it's good to see that kind of shine. And on top of that, before we move on too, you mentioned the Destiny 2 stuff. That to me is probably, outside of the iOS deal with Xbox getting that, because I actually saw Tom Warren from The Verge tweet about that earlier this week, and him mention, like, this is a big deal with the iOS, thing. This is a good middle ground for right now. It's obviously not the answer that Microsoft wants, but, Sony's been able to do this with the PlayStation 4 for so long with remote play, even between both both iOS, Android devices, your iPads, your laptops, even, with the Vita with them. You were always able to do it, and this is at least a good, middle ground for right now. Obviously, hopefully moving toward their ultimate goal with that, with getting xCloud on there. But the Destiny stuff to me is probably the biggest story, because you look at, and we're going to talk about it more here in a few minutes whenever we get into impressions for the Xbox Series X, like, storage is one of the biggest issues I think a lot of people are going to have going into next gen. And games are only getting bigger. I mean, fucking A, look at, like you were saying, Modern Warfare. Modern Warfare is almost 100, it's like at 150 gigabytes now, if not, right around there. The fact that you still get almost daily multiple gigabyte patches for that game, to then see how poorly optimized it is and how much, I'm sure just fluff and shit is in there, like extra code and extra assets that are kept on the back end. And it's probably more, if you're thinking of Warzone, you probably have to install the full Modern Warfare title in general, whether you have Warzone or not. So then it incentivizes you, you could just unlock it and play the game. If you want to get into multiplayer with Warzone, you can do, or Modern Warfare, you could do it. All you have to do is pay $60 and you're in, man. You don't have to worry about installing everywhere. We already got you. So, like, to me, though, like, you look at titles like that are going forward to next gen, and you look at titles then like Destiny, that is a game that is fucking massive, just as massive, if not bigger than Call of Duty in terms of a player base consistently, that Bungie's able to go in there and give you a product that is going to be, these 1 terabyte SSDs that we're going to have going into next gen are going to be super fucking great because they're going to be super fast with loading and everything like that. But as we're going to talk about, it's not going to be cheap to upgrade that. So having titles like that, having large scale, entities, developers like Bungie getting in there and saying, let's make this, let's trim the fat here. Let's figure out a way that we can take this forward and get more people in there, because, hey, it's free to play. And two, hey, it doesn't take up that much on my hard drive. I can pop it in there and pop in and out if I want. I don't have to worry about deleting it all the time. So I agree that is such a huge thing, moving forward. So, Mike, with that being said, let's not skate around it anymore. Let's get into the news for this week. And the big topic, of course, like we talked about last week, the Xbox Series X. We got impressions coming up. Obviously us. I mean, we're big time content creators. I mean, Phil Spencer directly. And it's funny, Mike, I just got off the phone with Phil before here. We go back so far, years now. Man, if you talk to him, talk about Kathmandu, he'll tell you a whole story about the time we went there. Let me tell you. We are obviously big content creators, so we obviously got an Xbox Series X right off the bat. They sent it to me pretty early. It's been sitting on my, entertainment center here for like 6 months now. Like, wait, did they send me an Xbox One X?
Thank.
I thought I've had a Series X the whole motherfucker. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, we did not get an Xbox Series X. But a lot of the media did get an Xbox Series X ahead of this. A lot of bigger publications and whatnot, The Verge, IGN, GameSpeed, all that shit, they have all got it. A lot of content creators, Twitch streamers, and YouTube content creators, things like that, have all been getting these preview builds of the Xbox Series X that are like 99% of the way there. It's not the final build, but it's as close as you're damn well going to get with it. So I figured before, we'll kick off the conversation here, I want to go into and talk about some of these impressions, because some of the things here that stick out, I think, are going to be big moving into next gen. Obviously, the good and the bad, because there's some things that do still worry me a little bit, that it isn't kind of all roses to a degree. So I figured the best way to do this, because overall, the one thing that a lot of people have talked about, obviously, all the content that they're able to cover on the system itself is all revolves around backwards compatibility stuff. They were given no next gen games to test. They were given none of that. It's all anything that is current gen stuff and backwards compatible 360 games, stuff like that. So take that with a grain of salt, and also take, too, just to keep in mind while we're going through this, all the games that are talked about that they're doing are before any actual next gen patches were added to these games. These are just, hey, I took my, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice case off the shelf, popped the disc out, put it in my Series X, and loaded it in and just ran it without any updates or anything like that. So, and there are improvements. So we're going to talk about this, and I figured we'd split it up into a couple different subdivisions here. Load times, design, storage, and the controller, too, to kind of cap it all off. So, Mike, let's get into load times here, and this write-up comes from Tom Warren's preview over on The Verge. As always, all these links will be in the description. I'll actually condense them into one Google Doc that you guys can view. You can just click on it if you want to go in there, read their full breakdowns on all the categories, each independently. By all means, you can do so. So make sure you go over there and give those guys some clicks. So Tom says, on terms of the load times at least, the most significant and obvious improvement while existing games on the Xbox Series X is the massive changes to load times. I noticed load times drop in pretty much every single game I've tested over the week. Games like Sea of Thieves, Warframe, Destiny 2 have their load times cut by up to a minute or more on the Series X. In Destiny 2, for example, I can now load into a planet in the game in around 30 seconds, compared to over a minute later on an Xbox One X, and nearly 2 minutes in total on a standard Xbox One. These improvement load times are identical to my custom-built PC that includes a fast NVMe SSD, and they genuinely transform how you play the game. You can get more quests and tasks done instead of sitting and looking at a planet loading. Warframe and Sea of Thieves are equally impressive with their load times. Now, I can now open Warframe and the game is ready to play in just 25 seconds later. That same load time literally takes a minute longer on my Xbox One X. Sea of Thieves now loads to menu screens in around 20 seconds with another 28 seconds to load into a session. My Xbox One X, it literally takes a minute and 21 seconds to even load the game initially, and then another minute and 12 seconds to get into a game session. None of these games have been fully optimized for the Xbox Series X either, as we said before. This is simply Microsoft's backwards compatibility support in action. I switch back to my Xbox One X regularly throughout the week, and it was painful to witness these load times that added a minute or more to my games. Heading into design here, Mike. Jeff Grubb from over at GamesBee kind of talked about the overall design of the box and what you're going to get from this machine, picking it up, putting it on your entertainment center or whatnot, your TV stand. So, the Xbox One is handsome, and I mean that in a modern sense. You know how a lot of Hollywood actors are all kinds of handsome in the same way, to the point that they're all sort of blending with one another? The Series X has that going on. Sure, when you first get it out of the box and you set it up in front of you, it looks strange and different due to its tall, bulky construction. But that faded away when I couldn't fit it into the shelving unit that we used for our house to house our electronics, if I can spit that out. To be fair, the Xbox, the PlayStation 4, and the Xbox One X don't fit in that either. I should get something new. But once you do get that Series X set up, it's mostly going to blend in with everything else in your home. I have it sitting on my desk right now, and I almost forgot that it's sitting right beside me until I specifically look at it. And then, like those Hollywood actors, if you look up close, you'll notice that it's quite attractive. The plastic case looks sturdy and monolithic, and the concave vent on top with its green accents acts like a tiny surprise for anyone who does give the device a close inspection. My biggest impression so far that this thing looks like it's worth $500 from the outside. I do worry about fingerprints, but honestly, I don't notice them under my normal home lighting. Storage is going to be my big thing, so let's head into that. And this comes from Ryan McCaffrey over at IGN. As always, definitely check out Ryan's coverage. He's done a ton of really good stuff. Everyone has, but Ryan has always been one of my favorite authors out there to read, and somebody in games journalism who has done a lot of really great stuff within the Xbox ecosystem. So definitely go and check out all of them, but specifically check out Ryan. His write-up was really good. Talking on storage, it's no secret that the game's installation sizes are only getting larger, and monthly ISP bandwidth caps are a concern for many gamers. Quote, in fact, I blew up mine for the first time ever while downloading a ton of games to test out on the Series X, so you'll need to use your 1 terabyte wisely. To be clear, it's 802 gigabytes of usable space after OS and system files. When you plug in the very pricey Seagate 1 terabyte storage expansion slot that gives you all the benefits of the internal drive, it adds 920 gigabytes of usable data capacity. A more affordable alternative is to use a cheap USB 3.1 external hard drive to store the next-gen games you're not playing and just shuffle them back and forth when you want them, sparing yourself the need to download them every single time. Besides, transferring between the Xbox Series X NVMe SSD and a USB 3.1 drive is pretty quick. Yes, you could play backwards compatible games off of an external drive, but you're going to want to run them from the internal SSD because the loading time averages are significant. I ran tests with Red Dead Redemption 2, Halo 5, Control, State of Decay 2, as well as Xbox 360 games Grand Theft Auto 4 and Fallout 4. I'm guessing he's saying Fallout. I'm guessing he's thinking Fallout 3 if he's talking Xbox 360, but the results varied from better to a lot better. Newer, more performance-intensive games like Red Dead 2 and Control saw the most benefit, but every test I ran yielded a noticeable advantage. Furthermore, I tried out Quick Resume, and Microsoft wasn't kidding around. It actually works. I like that they even put up a little Quick Resume icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen to let you know that you won't have to wait for an entire game to load from scratch. And then finally, Mike, let's talk on the controller before we head into our discussion here. This comes from Michael Higgum over on GameSpot. The new controller offers some subtle but no improvements over the current Xbox controllers. First is the textured grip on the handles, and to a lesser extent on the triggers and bumpers. The design choice provides a nice tactile feel that will be helping prevent slipping, especially when you sweaty folks out there get your hands on it. The dedicated share button is much more welcoming feature too, letting you capture screenshots and video clips on the fly, which even works if you connect it to an Xbox One. The new 8-way directional D-pad is quite clicky and a bit stiff, though it is responsive. It's also quite different from the disc-like design of the Elite controller D-pad. I personally like the new design, but that really comes down to preference. So, after all that, Mike, all of those impressions, we now know that, like I was saying, this isn't a final retail build of the unit that's being sent out, as we also noted last week, but, from what Microsoft has stated, it's pretty damn near close. So, initially, from the hip, what sticks out to you in terms of the system from these early impressions we've gotten so far, from whether we're talking from IGN, whether we're talking from Jeff Grubb over at GamesBeat, what sticks out to you so far hearing all of this?
I think, to me, probably one of the most important features of a console to me is specifically the controller design. It's one of the reasons why, I couldn't ever really get into PlayStation because I was so used to the Xbox controller feel from playing for so many hours, so many shooters on it, that I could never really get into the PlayStation simply because I just don't like the controller of the PlayStation. I think it's really bad, quite frankly. But that's like saying, I can't really say much about the PS4 controller because the Xbox One controller I think is awful. I think the stick tension or lack thereof, it feels like when you get a brand new controller, it feels tight, but then it's really loose. So dead zones kind of matter when it comes to shooters, which, it's kind of frustrating, but I still think the Xbox One controller is better than the PS4 controller, but I've still greatly prefer the Xbox 360 controller, and I wish I could still get my hands on a brand new one to play Halo on my PC. That's the most important thing to me. I think the load times are, going to be awesome, specifically because I'm really excited to see what they can do um, with some of the games, specifically like even for me recently, speedrunning Ninja Gaiden Black. If there's an update that makes that game load even faster, that means that some of the speedrun times are going to change because right now, the way the speedruns are calculated is it's real time as you're playing the game. So loading and everything is, taken into consideration when you are doing splits and things of that nature for speedruns. So I think that's really cool. And then of course, I think it goes without saying that obviously the design, the size of it and everything is interesting. But to me, again, I just want to reiterate the fact that I don't really give a shit what it looks like. It could be a flying saucer or a UFO. As long as the controller is better than the Xbox One, it's a win to me.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And I mean, we could start with the controller too, since you kind of, went down and pulled on that thread. But to me, from the sound of it, the controller in general just seems to build upon the success of both, the standard Xbox One controller and the Elite controller too, that has become popular over the past couple of years by really, from what Jeff Grubb said too, and I didn't include it in this write-up, but one of the things he talked about in his preview impressions too, in the video version at least, was that the controller itself, they reshifted the weight to more of the grips instead of more on the center of the controller. So your trigger fingers aren't feeling as super weighty sometimes. Like it gives you more of an actual grip on the controller whenever you're grabbing it, that it seems to provide a little more comfort to it. But I see this in general, like Microsoft looking at this and seeing the success. And I know you said you're kind of indifferent about it. It has its, in terms of the current next gen or the current gen controllers, I mean, you're kind of like, it's better than PlayStation, but it is what it is type of deal. It's not
a huge regression from the Xbox 360 controller, in my opinion. Comfort levels, stick control, durability. I mean, yeah, okay, people are going to be out there. Some of you out there might be like, hey, why did you always have to buy brand new wired controllers every few months if you were competing in a shooter? Well, yeah, true. There was a pretty big issue with slow turn, with those sticks. Eventually they would get slow turn, so people would always buy brand new Xbox 360 controllers, especially for Halo tournaments and things of that nature. But I mean, I would take slow turn over just like the stick feel, like pretty much the entire feel of the Xbox One controller. Like I still don't like it that much, even though I play a lot with it. I'm just still not the biggest fan of it. So that's kind of my biggest thing about it. I mean, in the Xbox 360 controllers, I know people, and I did it once or twice, where I would actually go in and remove the vibration panels, because if I'm only playing Halo or primarily playing Halo, I play vibration off anyway, so I don't need them, and it makes the controller significantly lighter. So maybe like if they really wanted to like give you some customization, maybe making that an easier process. But all in all, I mean, you could just pretty much put a screwdriver into it, take it apart, and take that off if you really want to. So I mean, that's my biggest thing about the controllers, is just overall comfort, because if you're putting in long sessions, you just want it to be comfortable. Is the most important thing.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And I agree to an extent on that. I've been a fan of the Xbox One controller. I mean, to be honest, the controller for the most part I've never competed like with controllers or anything like that for the most part. I've been play a lot of games, but it's more, single player. And then I do play a lot of, multiplayer games, but for the most part, it's on PC these days. So like I'm playing with mouse and keyboard, but in general, though, like I've really enjoyed the Xbox One controller. It seems a lot of people have, and even though it isn't my favorite controller, like you, I agree, it isn't my favorite. That it seems like it is a lot of people's favorite. It seems like that's like the go-to controller for anybody playing on. Hey, if I'm playing on PC, I'm gonna I'm gonna buy an Xbox One controller. It's the most compatible, yada yada. Like, and one thing that really stuck out to me was the fact that they're putting in that octagonal D-pad in there, compared to just the standard, like, traditional D-pad that you're seeing, whether it be PlayStation, Sony, or a PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, whoever. They're just putting in a 4-way traditional D-pad, they're actually giving you that premium almost option right off the bat. So speaking not necessarily for us directly, but as a whole, do you see this potentially becoming that fan favorite controller now that the Xbox One was for a large scale of people, not just Xbox fans, but could this be that controller that, hey, I just need to pick up a controller if I'm playing on PC or whatever, like this is going to be it?
Yeah, I still think that it's pretty much ingrained, especially for PC gamers. I don't know if it's like, I doubt, like, basically, I don't know that it's like the comfort and everything of the Xbox One controller in particular that people love, or just the fact that it's Microsoft and you know it's going to work and it's easy. You plug it and play it. You know, that's it. So I still think it's going to be the favorite, just because if you have a Windows computer, you plug it in, it takes a couple of seconds to install the drivers and everything, and then you're good to go. So I do think it's going to remain the crowd favorite for PC gamers. But again, like, most PC gamers, you know, should be using mouse and keyboard for pretty much most, or if not all, shooters, basically, unless you're playing a game like Halo that still has aim assist, things of that nature. Controllers are obviously better than mouse and keyboard, but you know, I try to explain to people like Kyle, our good friend Kyle, that like you just have to suck it up and get used to mouse and keyboard, because it's going to be so much better in the long run.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I still think it's going to be, you know, the controller that people use for a lot of reasons, including it being Microsoft software. But it'll be interesting to see if like some of EA's games make their way to PC, because then you start to get into the argument that like a controller is needed for those games also. So I'm interested to see if that does happen. I think they're going to try to start putting some of those games on PC, because I think if there's one thing EA knows how to do, or at least wants to do, is to make the most money, to make as much money as humanly possible. And it feels like PC games is like they're just missing out on a big market right there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. This year, we're seeing the return of EA Sports titles that are coming onto there. We're seeing FIFA 21, Madden. Like, they're all on Steam. Like, coming to Steam. NHL, I'm not actually sure about if it is.
It's not.
Okay, so it seems like it's just FIFA and Madden, then, for the most part. Which makes sense. Those are their two most popular franchises out of them. But
it's just hilarious that the only EA game I play is NHL because I like hockey, and it's the worst. It's the fucking worst game. Like, it's the worst one out of them all. Even though Madden's awful too. Like like NHL by far the worst game that EA releases, and I'm like the one that's like a sucker and has to buy the new console, or I don't even have to buy the new console to play it actually, because it's not coming out on it. So whatever, I don't care. I'm not getting off into a tangent about EA. I won't do it, because it's not gonna make me feel any better.
Zen, peace, tranquility.
God.
Don't bust out the jammies yet.
I hate EA.
All right, so let's move on to load times then. Let's kind of tackle that and start from the top and work our way down, even though we did controllers, but fuck it, it's our show. We'll do it how we want. So just in general, fast load times obviously were one of the biggest talking points behind really marketing of next gen in general. Not just Microsoft, Sony, everybody who is involved with next gen is talking about load times, tackling that issue that players have of, I want to get into a game as quick as possible. I want to be able to not sit there on my phone for 5 minutes after I start a game, just to be able to load in and start it, playing it finally. Or, oh shit, I die and I gotta wait 30 seconds to load back in to, you know, just retry the same objective again. So load times are very much like one of the biggest focal points of this moving in, especially with Microsoft. So given what we've kind of seen with the impressions that we've gotten so far, it seems like they're overall pretty snappy. Do you think they are living up to what's been marketed? Do you think they, you know, seem to be as marketed? Do you think this lives up to the hype, I guess, in general so far? At least from, and I know this is all backwards compatible content that has been tested on this, but I mean, in general, it seems pretty well. What do you think? Do you think this is living up to that hype that Microsoft kind of built up around, you know, quick resume and the fast load times?
Yeah, that's probably something that, I mean, they've been basically banging that drum since they announced that this console was going to come out, and it seems like they are delivering on it, which is promising. Because even if it's like as simple as customer loyalty or trust, even like whenever you are like hyping up a specific thing and you fall short of that. Obviously, you know, you've worked retail. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have. The rule always was under promise, over deliver. You know, some stores don't like to hear that, but I think everyone that works in retail understands that. But when Microsoft is over promising, and still delivering, it's very cool, and I'm excited for it. But again, like a game like Ninja Gaiden Black that takes forever to load, if you wanted to, I don't know, you know, maybe you want to play Elder Scrolls Oblivion on Xbox, like the loading times to that. Like I remember specifically having to buy a new copy because the load times were so bad. Like as a copy wore down and got older, the load times got longer and longer. So
yeah, because I remember the disc obviously became harder to read over time, and it just like I remember that was so bad. That's why like going back and playing that game now on like even on like I haven't installed my SSD on my PC, and it's just one of those games that will always be installed on my PC no matter what until the day I die, just because I never know when I want to get that itch just to jump in and play it. But seeing that game and like having the ability to go back and play that game and like just click on it and you're instantly loaded in, where like you knowing how bad that was back in the day of it's literally, and really smartphones weren't a thing then. Like it wasn't like you could do anything else. You just had to fucking wait. Like
yeah, you just sat there and stared at it and listened to the music that played.
But like, go ahead.
I mean, that was part of the struggle, and and you know that was part of it. But I think, you know, all the promise of backwards compatibility updates and everything is really cool, because even Sony, you know, can't even promise that there is going to be backwards compatibility. And the PS4, that was one of the big issues with it. And it's just promising that they are willing to support their older generation games. And it's really cool because, you know,
that's been like one of the biggest things, like, not to interrupt you, but like, as somebody who still plays a lot of games on PlayStation, like, it pisses me off whenever I do see, you know, and we are very much aware, game development, hardware development is very, very hard. This isn't fucking easy stuff. I'm sure it is much more complicated than just, just fucking make it work type of thing. But whenever you take a system like the PlayStation 4, after knowing how bad, like, the cell processor was whenever on the PS3, moving to the PlayStation 4 and telling developers, this is basically a PC. You can develop it, you could do UE4 on it, like, it is going to be easy to develop on. And that's why so many that's why so many, not only a ton of people playing on it, but also, too, that's where so many game companies wanted to work with PlayStation, because it was so easy to develop on there. That you would think moving forward, that helps you move forward, where Sony's still having trouble saying, like, well, yeah, like, originally it was like the top 100 PS4 games are going to be good to go at launch, to, yeah, we're at like 90 now, like 90%. We're, 90% of PS4 games are going to work. There'll be a couple that, we don't want to, but like, where Microsoft now is just saying, yeah, you're going to have like thousands of games right off the bat. Like, as soon as you turn this thing on day one, pop it in. Even if you, for some reason, don't, like, you pop a game in and it doesn't work, let us know. Like, they've been very vocal of like, hey, let us know. If this is a game that you want to eventually try to us to get on there, let us know. We'll try to make it work. So, like, I agree. Not to interrupt you, but I just want to throw that out there that, yeah, like, it is frustrating as somebody who does like to play, legacy content and games from my back catalog that are a few generations old still, like, and have a good time with them, Morrowind, Oblivion, whatever, like, that does piss me off. Like, I like that I like that Microsoft gives me the option to carry my content, my legacy content forward. And I, like, as somebody who plays on both systems, like, I want to do that too. I have PlayStation games I want to fucking play too. Like,
and who wants to have like every single one of those systems out and hooked up all the time? Like, right, Xbox is doing a really good job at allowing you to just kind of like, whether it be trade in, take it to the shooting range and blow it up with like bullets, or what's that other thing people make? That big ass like explosion when you shoot it. Whatever. Anyway. Yeah.
I know
Xbox,
what you're talking about. Yeah.
Power or something.
Oh,
something.
Yes. I know what you're talking about. The third over it's combustible that you could shoot it and it'll just like fucking yeet everything around it.
Literally. And I mean, to me, like, Microsoft basically replacing everyone's like, you just don't have to worry about sitting there and having 800 consoles hooked up if you want to play legacy content. That's like an actual big deal, because when I have my own game room. In the future, there's going to be an NES, there's going to be a Sega, there's going to be an N64, and then there's going to be a Microsoft console that plays all those old games. Maybe it'll just be this last console. Maybe it'll be a newer one. And like, that'll cover all the Xbox games that I have. You know what I mean? Like, that's a pretty big deal to me. But
100%.
I might just be looking, or thinking too much into it. But I just think that the fact that like Sony's just like, nah, just like, good luck with your backwards compatibility, pal. All those old games you bought, you're fucked. That old console, you better hold on to. Just funny to me. But
yeah. Well, it's good to know looking at like, and I pulled up Tom's article here because he gives a little more detailed breakdown on a couple more games. Looking at some of these, side by side, you have games that surprisingly, like Call of Duty Warzone, on the Series X, it loads at 16 seconds. Xbox One X is only 21 seconds. So, it's for as unoptimized as that game is from, an actual gameplay perspective, whenever you're actually in there playing that game, it's good to see that at least maybe Activision's looking a little forward thinking, having, who is Infinity Ward actually tackle like some of those things moving forward in the next gen, seeing how big Warzone is. But then you get into games like Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a game that people are going to be playing for a long time. That's one of those titles that, is going to be a Grand Theft Auto 5, that is going to be, something that gets remastered, I'm sure, at one point to move forward, not just the backwards compatibility thing, or it's going to get a next-gen upgraded patch or whatever to support 8K or whatever. But in general, it takes 52 seconds on a Series X to load in. Normally, it takes up from a minute and 35 seconds to almost 2 minutes before. So you're cutting that load time in half. And you know that, Mike, from playing that game. That is a beefy fucking game. I bought the PC version when it was like really cheap on sale before. I think it was like over Christmas or something. But I installed that onto my SSD thinking like, oh, it's going to load pretty fast. It still takes a fucking long ass time to load. So like seeing that get under a minute is wild to my mind. And like just looking at other ones too, like Warframe, which is a huge free to play game that a lot of people like are into. It's not necessarily in my, it's not in my bubble or anything really, but it's a game that a lot of people play. It loads in 25 seconds on a Series X compared to an Xbox One that's a minute and a half. Like, that's just mind-boggling. Destiny 2, 43 seconds on a Series X compared to almost 2 minutes on an Xbox One. Like, that's wild. Like, you got to think about the amount of time you're going to actually be going, like, 43 seconds to load into the game and get playing, but then another, probably 30 seconds, let's say, to quick travel or whatever, if not less on a Series X, to, at least a minute or so, if not more, on an Xbox One, where, like, that stuff adds up. That's, like, a half hour that you've just sat there and done nothing. Like, by the time you're done playing.
Yeah, and I guess as an adult, like, when you have a lot less time to devote to it, that makes all the difference because it lets you get into it easier, lets you get out of it easier. Exactly. Which is important for both of us, really, in the sense we're getting older.
Right, 100%. So let's round out the impression talk here before we move on to our last topic that I want to talk on today. We only have 2 topics because, obviously, this is just a huge news week. We're going to have huge news weeks, I think, until probably... I have a feeling somewhere after, November 10th, maybe. No, even then, we're probably going to have a lot of news around then, too. Even after these consoles launch, we're going to have a fucking shit ton of news. So let's wrap up the impressions talk here with storage first. Kind of looking at Ryan's article here, Mike, both of us play PC gaming. Both of us have built, pretty decent high-end PCs for the most part. We have SSDs in there. We know what those things are capable of. Especially you, me, I have a SATA SSD. So where you actually have, an M.2 SSD, an NVMe one, like, you know how impactful those drives are, but also how expensive those drives are still. So,
yeah. You're talking like a boot up speed for me from completely cold PC to pressing the power button. I'm logging into my user in probably like 8 to 9 seconds max. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
and even with my like SSD, it's right around there too. It's so nice. Like it really is so nice. But looking at, consoles where this is a new technology that is coming to consoles right now. the Seagate expandable storage drive that Microsoft is branding and selling, that is built specifically for this system to expand its hard drive to take advantage of those SSD technologies still if you want those speeds. But, hey, 1 terabyte isn't going to do it, which we've been worried about. That expandable storage drive is there for you. But it's been a recent topic of debate considering the price is $220 in US, that is, at least. And at the same time, that's not crazy, So, that seems to be that seems to kind of be the going rate for, that design of storage with most M.2 drives and, just SATA SSDs in general are, traditionally much more expensive than a standard, hard disk drive. Do you think Microsoft is going to kind of face long-term backlash for this? Like Sony did whenever they released the Vita and the storage you can get on it, for some fucking reason, it was some kind of, micro SD card that you can get, but it was specifically made for the Vita, and it was expensive as shit, to just buy more of it. And I didn't own a Vita then, but I remember that being a big deal that, a lot of people were like, it's fucking half the price of the console to go and buy one of these fucking, expandable storage things. And this is almost the same type of deal. So do you think long-term, Microsoft is going to face some backlash from, people who maybe have never gamed on a PC before? All these new people who are, there's so many, gaming is at the height of the amount of people who are playing games right now. This is the most popular it's ever been. So more people who aren't necessarily as at the enthusiast level like we are coming in and saying, oh, well, I'm running out of storage. Oh, I'll just go buy, it can't be that much to buy a new one. Oh, what are these? $220? What the fuck? Do you think we're going to get into situations like that? And do you think we're going to, fans are going to, or Microsoft is going to face long-term backlash from fans over this for the next couple of years?
I sure, it feels kind of like that might happen, right? I guess as of right now, if you have an Xbox One, the games are getting so big. Most people probably own an external hard drive. And with the Xbox One, it's pretty much like any external hard drive will work, right? Which is really actually cool. So for the entire system to sort of regress in a way is definitely disheartening to a certain extent, right? The fact that it's just not plug and play like it was with the Xbox One seems really silly, especially because they're making leaps and bounds of progress and basically everything else. You would like to see it a little differently, but some of the older gamers like us and other people, they're we're not strangers to memory cards and memory packs and things of that nature. Now, granted, I don't remember because I was too young for the N64 memory packs you had to buy, and the Sega Dreamcast ones I remember filled up super fast. So I don't necessarily remember that so much, but I do remember specifically with the Xbox 360, there was memory cards, and some people didn't even really know that those existed. But the only time it really came into something that was important for me was when I went to MLG tournaments. If you wanted to save your gameplay from your point of view, you had a memory card, and it was really easy. Bungie made it really easy for you to go in and save film. And then you would just go on the settings of the Xbox back from the dashboard and manually move that film to your flash drive or your memory card. And obviously it's a little techie and whatever, but really cool. But I am concerned that this memory, and especially the external memory, being specifically branded or being what's the word I'm looking for? Shit. Basically kind of exclusive in a way, I guess, is concerning because it does feel like the price might be a little higher than what you would expect. Again, reiterating,
it's
the
proprietary
fact that,
for that. It's made specifically for
proprietary.
That device. Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for. But again, let me just let me make everyone know that specifically because it's a regression from the Xbox One, being able to just plug a random solid state or a random external drive in. You know what I mean? Regressing is kind of a bummer.
No, definitely. And it is to a degree. I can completely understand where people are going to, feel that way about this, but it's just that we seem to come across that this thing every handful of years whenever technology's starting to actually, we're starting to actually move forward with some aspects of tech. You just see these bulbous prices that end up, popping up with, some of the tech early on that it's getting. And realistically, we would technically be early adopters for SSDs on console, because that's just it's not been done before. It hasn't been to this scale. It hasn't been done before. Now, granted, you could have put in an SSD or SSD into your Xbox One or PS4 in a third-party manner. It wasn't supported by, PlayStation or Xbox in general. So, like, you could have done that, but from their development, they developed the hardware for it. They put it all together. They manufactured it. This is their thing, So I completely understand this is new from the get-go doing this. So we always do see these kind of bulbous prices right off the bat. You see these large kind of inflated prices, but storage in general, like SSD storage in general, just hasn't gone down in a while. But granted, it's still relatively new overall. It's still it's going to be new for a while longer. And that's going to be the issue that I worry about with people being able to kind of, tackle all of this, like be able to move in and, somebody who's new to gaming in general of, hey, you know what? I've only bought one console, in a long time, but I want to get back into gaming. I'm going to buy the new one coming out. I'm an adult now. I have exposable income. You know what? I want to treat myself and get the new one with this, and isn't aware of what SSDs are, what this technology can do, things like that I feel like that's just going to scare people away a little bit. I think it's going to I feel like it could almost be, kind of like, not to the same extent where this is much more impactful to the gaming and playing experience, but almost like the HD DVD drive that like the fucking 360 had back in the day. That it was like people who wanted to do that. Oh yeah, you could buy the proprietary device for it to plug into. It doesn't play it natively, but it's like fucking $300 to go and do that. Well, it's like, well, shit, I'll just go and buy the actual fucking player at that point. Like, where people just aren't used to, they want this new tech, but they're not used to that price tag that comes with it, where this is such a niche thing in general with storage in general, in, like, whenever you're talking hard drives, SSDs, things like that, where it's such a niche aspect of tech that Joe Blow's probably not going to know that going in, or mom thinking, oh, isn't that what it means when, storage, that's just how much I can fit on my iPhone, right? Well, it tells me on there, like, oh, well, you could upgrade it here. Oh, it's $200+ to do that. What the hell? I'm not doing that for my kid. Like, I think it's going to be an issue for the casual consumer, for the greater overall, like us who understand how this technology works is like, it sucks, but you know what? That's the going rate for you'll be able to do it a little bit cheaper if you want to do a third party one and make it work type of thing. But at the end of the day, you're going to save $30, maybe $40, maybe. But like, when you could just buy the Xbox brand one and it just fucking plugs right into the back and you're good to go. Like, so it's really going to be, I think it's going to be an issue for them, but at the same time, hopefully if we see more developers like Bungie try to tackle, streamlining their content, making their content more optimized from a storage capacity standpoint, like, maybe they won't be an issue. Maybe it won't, and more people are going to be streaming, games and things like that with xCloud and whatnot. I would imagine game streaming is eventually going to make its way to the Xbox Series X and the Xbox One, or Xbox Series S as well. That, xCloud is just going to be built into there, and if I want, I could just pay the subscription service and stream all my games, and I don't have to fucking worry about it. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see long term how that kind of tackles, and I'm curious to see even short term how people are going to react on launch day, whenever, that first launch, 6 months, I would say, of, okay, now that there's more games starting to come out, what the fuck am I going to do? Especially with Game Pass and you being able to download so many games and whatnot. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited. I'm still excited for these new consoles. I'm still very excited. I'm ready to get this new console gen underway. All right, Mike, let's head into our last news topic for this week. And this one's kind of shitty. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be, I'm sure this isn't going to be a fun conversation. But let's just head into it and we'll kind of discuss on the back end here. Cyberpunk 2077 publisher orders 6 day weeks ahead of launch. This comes from Jason Schreier over on Bloomberg. As always, link in the description. Polish video game developer CD Projekt Red told employees on Monday that 6-day work weeks will be mandatory leading up to the November release of the highly anticipated Cyberpunk 2077, reneging on an earlier promise to not force overtime on the project. Red, a subsidiary of Poland's biggest gaming company, CD Projekt SA, has been criticized previously for engaging in, quote, crunch, an industry term for excessive overtime in game development. The practice has often lasts for weeks and can stretch out for months or even years. CD Projekt Red co-chief executive officer Marcin Iwinski, hope I said that right, Marcin Iwinski last year told gaming website Kotaku that the company would be avoiding mandatory crunch and was, quote, committed to allowing employees to work without overtime. But an account from a CD Projekt Red employee recently, as well as an email to his staff earlier this week, indicate that the company hasn't lived up to its word. The employee, who asked to not be named discussing private information, said some staff had already been putting in nights and weekends for more than a year. In an email, CD Projekt Red studio head Adam Badowski wrote that he was optimistic about the state of Cyberpunk 2077, which stars Keanu Reeves, and that had just sent the game to be certified for release on Sony Corp's PlayStation and Microsoft Corp's Xbox. Now, he wrote, it was time to fix the game's many lingering bugs and glitches. Quote, starting today, the entire development studio is in overdrive, Badowski wrote, elaborating that it meant, quote, your typical amount of work in one day of week, or that this meant your, quote, your typical amount of work in one day of the weekend. The extra work would be paid as required by Polish labor laws. Many other video game studios don't pay for overtime. Quote, I take it upon myself to receive the full backlash for this decision, he wrote. I know this is in direct opposite to what we've said about crunch. It's also in direct opposition to what I personally grew to believe a while back. The crunch should never be the answer. But we've extended all other possible means of navigating this situation. I mean, besides delaying the game? I don't know. Anyways, in a post on Twitter Wednesday, Badowski said CD Projekt employees can continue to count on bonus payouts amounting to 10% of the company's annual profits. This could prove to be a lucrative sum, as analysts estimate that Warsaw-based companies' net income will rise 11-fold to 2 billion. How do you say that, Mike? Zloty? Zloty? I think.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay. This could prove to be a lucrative sum, as analysts estimate the Warsaw-based company's net income will rise 11-fold to 2 billion zloty, which is estimated to be 520 million in 2020. CD Projekt Red had 1,079 employees at the end of June.
I guess it's Zloty. Technically, yeah.
Well,
0.26 United States dollars for every one Zloty. ZLO with like a hat, like the O with a, and then D, and then an E with a line above it. So Zloty, I would think.
Zloty. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there is another time that I say it in here, so I'll at least roll with that then. Quote, it seems that most investors take into account that in a highly competitive industry where programmers and graphic designers are the main asset, the company has to offer high bonuses in order to not lose its staff and compensate any crunch, said Tomasz Rodak, an analyst at BOS Bank. CD Projekt Chief Financial Officer Piotr Neblowski responded to Bloomberg's questions in an email saying that Cyberpunk's November 19th launch date won't be changed, adding that the studio is working to eliminate most bugs at the last straight, the main reason it asked employees to work an extra day. Shares in CD Projekt fell 3% to close at 418.4 zloty in Warsaw. Trigon analysis Kapkier Kopran said in a research note that the news about crunch may weaken sentiment to stock, even as the risk of further postponement of Cyberpunk release is minimal. Last year, Iwanowski and Badowski told Kotaku that they were looking to make CD Projekt Red a more, quote, humane place to work. Quote, we are known for treating gamers with respect, Iwanowski said. I actually would like for us to be known for treating developers with respect as well, unquote. So, after butchering a lot of names, I'm sure, during all of that, we've touched on this subject a bit before previously, but never in more than, the theoretical sense, like of, we're talking about past situations and whatnot, never really necessarily in the moment, hey, this is applicable, this is going on right now, this is being reported on right now. this is now kind of a real-time look at this issue that's going on. And CD Projekt Red has consistently stayed true on their word on a lot of things involving the games that they develop and produce, specifically when it comes to transparency with their products, saying that, we're focused on trying to eliminate crunch. We're focused on giving, taking this quote unquote humane approach to game development and making sure our developers are treated right and they can see their families and whatnot, so. And this is, even they're also really taking that, like they said, that focus on consumer friendly practices too with their releases, whether it's, free next gen upgrades to both The Witcher and Cyberpunk 2077 and tons of free content from both of those titles, So, Mike, has all of this started to come at a cost of their employees' time and energy now? Obviously, like we said, game development is incredibly hard and time consuming, but for a developer to at one point come out and say, no, we're not going to continue the industry trend and crunch and let the game come out when it's ready. It's ready when it's ready, as they've said numerous times over the years. To then make an order like this, it seems that they're willing to risk their reputation of their work environment and their studio in general over making sure this game ships for a holiday rush. And that's just, to me, from the outside looking in, that's them wanting to make sure they hit this deadline instead of, delaying again, which to me, it's like, in general, this game's going to sell gangbusters no matter what. Whether it comes out, it may sell a couple more copies, and we're talking, when I say a couple, that's, obviously hyperbolic. It's going to sell more than a couple, but it may sell a smaller margin more if you put it close to a Christmas release date or these consoles coming out, but the hype around this game has been palpable for fucking years. This is one of the most anticipated games of all time. This is one of those games that looks to usher in a new take on the open world genre and what immersion can be done in gaming. So, has this come at a cost, Mike? Has this been that, hey, do you think they've said, we're willing to risk the standing of our development studio within the industry to make sure this game ships alongside these consoles for the most part or into their launch windows, compared to delaying it again and making sure it gets out on time, making sure it gets out and done properly, but doing so and that's right by their employees.
Yeah, this feels like, it's 100% what happens with corporations and big money, specifically in relation to the stock market. So basically, CD Projekt is a company that began, being publicly traded, what looks like early February of this year. Oh, well, actually, no, hold on one sec. November 22nd, 2019, it opened at $17.35. On August 28th, it hit a high of $30.50. Now it's crashing down to, it's right around, it closed at $25 at market close today. So you're looking at a company that is down 10%, even this month. I guess not, because October just started, but in September it's down like 10%. So, I feel like this is 100% something that this is like something that I would have bet pretty much all the marbles that was going to happen, even though they were like, no, it's never going to happen. Like, dude, crunch is going to happen. You guys weren't going to get it done. We know this. To me, it's 100% stock market influence on their behavior, because they can't afford to, open up and tank below what they opened at, especially. So basically they're wanting to get it out in Q4 because they need the Q4 earnings report to be substantial, because they want to significantly increase their company's value before Q1 comes. Because usually for companies, most of all companies, Q1, Q2 sometimes are you operate at break even or even sometimes a deficit, but you're looking for Q3 and Q4. And I'm sure the company has been promising investors, yeah, don't worry, this game's coming out. We're going to get it out on time. We're going to get it out on time. Hold on to your stock. It's still worth it. And they're starting to see it, a little bit of a sell-off happening with their stock. And I feel like it's 100% influencing their decision to, money is 100% one of the biggest drivers for this decision. And, it's capitalist. It's the capitalist economy, and it's the world economy, and it's, whether it's right or wrong, or whether you agree with it or not, that's it's the nature of the beast, and I fear that for game developers, especially, whether you are, feel good or not about organizing, and that U word that in America you get fired for almost instantly at most places if you don't have a U. The Western Union bank, but or money transfer, but that's what we call it at my employer. If we're joking about we need to unionize, we always call it the Western Union. So I just feel like this is something that is a real fear every day for me, for pretty much anyone, especially game dev, the game dev industry, because they're not organized.
Do you think unionization is the logical next step for game development? Because there's so many contractors, because there's so many, I don't want to say part-time, but like there are so many positions that, and this seems to be just in entertainment in general, but specifically in this sect of entertainment when it comes to gaming, and this being such a tech-heavy industry, that you see so many other industries that, or so many other sects of the tech industry that have unionization, that have representation, that have security around them. The gaming industry doesn't, because it's in this weird, middle ground. Is there a way do you think there is a legitimate way for unionization to come to the games industry? And do you think that solves a lot of these issues?
It's definitely a more difficult industry for it to crack, simply because it being so global. In particular, CD Projekt Red is from Poland, and
yep.
If American game dev studios unionize, that's not going to influence Polish game dev studios to unionize per se, unless
or Asian game studios.
Yeah, like Asian game studios definitely are not going to unionize, but maybe American game dev studios unionizing would put pressure on them, because some of that top talent that they have might, defect to America. But again, that's a big if, because the way America's going right now, I don't know too many people from Europe that are going to be like willingly ready to just pick up and move to America to be a game dev, just simply to have a union. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, it seems like game development is in this purgatory where it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't type thing, where it's like they're probably never going to unionize because it's not logistically possible, but they're going to keep getting bent over the barrel until they do. So it's like they're stuck in this hellacious thing where it's like, growing up as a kid, they're like, my dream's to make video games, and then they finally get to do it, and they're just getting screwed pretty much every way they turn. They're just getting the raw end of it, you know what I mean? Which is really sad, and I wish that there was a better answer to it, but unfortunately I just don't think there is, until the only real way that there would ever be an answer to it is if consumers, if you were a free market person, if consumers voted with their dollar and basically stopped buying those games. But that's unrealistic.
100%.
That's just not going to happen either. So it's definitely, they're in one of the worst catch-22s that you could ever be in. And I feel bad. I feel for the game developers because their heart's in it. They love it. But anyone that gets made to work 60, 70 hours a week is going to get burnt out. Like, that's without a doubt going to happen for anybody. I don't care what you do for a living. That gets old, you need some free time.
I could say that from personal experience working in college athletics. I mean, I don't get, and this is just being transparent and being frank, I don't get paid overtime. There's weeks where minimum I'm working 60-hour weeks. I'm working nights, I'm working weekends. I'm missing out on things with my partner. I'm missing out with things on my family. I'm missing out on things with my friends. I'm missing out on things that affect my mental well-being more so than a dollar could fix. And me personally, I don't get that because I'm salaried. And that's with how our pay structure is set up and how a lot of pay structure is set up with salaried employees in the US, that, we don't have a union. We don't have anything protecting us, that it's, we don't have that representation. And, my partner is a teacher. Same with yours, Mike. They're both teachers, and, teachers unionization has luckily, while teachers still get, unfortunately bent over the barrel in terms of pay and what they are forced to pay just to run their classroom, at least, if it wasn't for those unions, they would be getting screwed even more. I mean, even way more than they are currently. But I mean, at least they have some protection there from a union that is getting them base minimum pay and things like that. So, it's tough to say, because I agree that you look at this from a world perspective, and there's to create such an that large of an umbrella that covers so many areas throughout the world for their representation, for their protection. It would be such a large undertaking that logistically it seems impossible. But in the US specifically, maybe a little bit more understandable, maybe a little bit, it may be something that can be tried, and it is being tried to be there are a few organizations that are trying to bring awareness to this, that are trying to set up ways that legally they can, game devs can be protected, because we find this far too often, especially in major AAA gaming. Granted, we'll still see it in independent indie devs and everything too, where they're working. Granted, you look at the games and the studios behind them in terms of not the quality of the game by all means, but you look at the amount of people that are making those games, and of course they're working crazy hours, because there's usually only 1 to 5 people working on a lot of these games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, who else is going to do it? So if they want to get the project done, they got to do it. But to do it at a AAA level, whenever you're looking at games like The Last of Us Part 2, like a Red Dead Redemption 2, like these medium defining games, these games that, people are going to bat for, saying this, when we say video games are art, this is it. They're holding up Red Dead Redemption 2 saying, this is fucking art. It may not resonate with everyone, but this is fucking art. This is just as impactful as any film, book, music, whatever. This is art. The amount of time and effort that goes into that on that level, I just couldn't imagine doing something that you're so passionate about, that you love so much. Like, if you're working in game development, you love gaming, you love the medium, you love everything like that. And even me, I work in sports to a degree. I always love sports. I'm very burnt out of it, but that's because I'm there all the time. I'm having to work all the time, and right now is a little different. Unfortunately, I want us to play sports for the longevity of my job, obviously, but right now it's been nice where I've been working 40 hours a week and half time at home and whatnot. Like, it feels nice being a normal person where it's like, I couldn't, game development, having something you love so much, creating and developing these experiences for people that you're so proud of at the end of the day, but sacrificing so much. I mean, and take, for example, Cory Barlog, the creative director behind God of War in 2018 and God of War 2 as well. But whenever the last final stretch of this game, he talked about in an interview that his wife and kid he didn't see his wife and kid for 4 months. Literally, his wife was from I can't remember exactly, Sweden or no, Switzerland. I think that's where she's from. She was from Switzerland, and they lived in the States, but he had said, they decided that her and their son were going to go and live there for a while during this development, because he wasn't going to be home. He wasn't going to be able to. So they went and stayed with family and whatnot. And, and it was for the best and everything like that, I'm sure. But just imagine that, because you want to get this game done in time, that this game is going to sell no matter what. Point blank. This game will, at the end of the day, whenever everything is said and done, when this game, we look back on Cyberpunk 2077 as we're getting ready to play The Witcher 4 in 5 to 6 years or whatever, we look back on this game, it's still going to set records right out the gate, whether it releases November 19th or releases February 19th or April 19th or fucking July 19th or November 19th next year. Like, it doesn't matter. It is going to sell gangbusters, period. It's going to set records. It's going to, for all intents and purposes, looks to be that next step in gaming from an open world immersive experience. So it's going to set records. We already know it's going to. So why the fuck force it right now? If it's already it's going to sell millions of copies, to, at the end of the day, yeah, maybe you'll get a 2% sales bump or whatever, making sure you get it out by the launch of these consoles and before Thanksgiving. Outside of that, man, is that worth it? I mean, and sure, capitalism rules, especially here in the States, unfortunately, where, you're only as valuable as the dollar you make, and that's sad. So it's just a sad affair because this game looks fucking fantastic, and I am very much still excited to play it, but I get troubled when these games that I'm so excited for and care so much about these experiences, that I care so much about the team behind them creating them, that when I know this fucks them at the end. Now, maybe financially, said and done, they're going to get these bonuses and everything like that, and great, that's awesome, but there's one thing money can't buy, and that's time. And that's time with your family, that's time with your loved ones, your friends, whatever, your personal time. Just you sitting on a couch and decompressing. You can't even have that, then what the fuck? Like, it's just rough to see. So, and like you're saying, the answer isn't straightforward, and we're probably not going to get an answer for a while, and that blows, if ever. So, I don't know, man. Not to end it on a sad note, but it's shitty to, kind of think about that, and how that this medium is struggling so much with something that now that this medium's making tens of billions of dollars every year in revenue that's generating, that, it's at a point now where it's, okay, we can figure out a better way. There's a better way to do this, and let's figure it out. And you would think we've been seeing that on a grander scale with our society in general, especially here in the States, when COVID hit, that a lot of people are realizing, oh shit, our employees can work from home. Our employees can get the job done just as good as they can if they're here in a better time frame, and sometimes more efficiently. More people are starting to see that and accept that a little bit, which is great. It's sad it took this fucking situation to make that happen, but, it's just something now that gaming's at this point in its, legacy, I guess, in its history, that it's like, I'm ready to see evolution. The evolution I'm seeing with the technology and the experiences I'm getting, I want to see that same evolution take place on the back end too, for the people who are making these games, because people make these games at the end of the day. They don't make themselves. There's humans behind these, and people need to remember that sometimes. So, well, not to end on a super somber note, let's head into party chat and maybe kind of make it a little bit better this week, and kind of. But if you're new to the show, party chat is where we propose one question at the end of each week that we want to discuss. Could be as simple as, what's your favorite story beat in a game of all time? Or what have you been playing during quarantine? Or more, a little bit deeper and more in depth, why is the negative stigma around gaming still exist? Stuff like that, So, and after answering the question ourselves, we'll kick it over to you to tweet your responses over to us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast, or you can email us. Our email is over on our Twitter bio as well. You can do that as well. And we'll read some of your responses the following week. Last week's question, what is the first Bethesda title you are planning to play when the back catalog hits Game Pass? And frankly, D9156 says Doom Eternal. That's great to hear, because that just came out, as I've yet to play it, but next would be The Evil Within. And I can't recommend The Evil Within enough, so I'm really glad that those are two good games to pick right off the bat. I'm not going to lie. I haven't finished Evil Within 2 yet, but it's very, very, very good, but it's very, very, very different from the first one. So definitely, take that in mind whenever you're playing that, frankly, D. But yeah, Evil Within, definitely a great pick. And Doom Eternal, you can't go wrong with Doom. Doom's fucking awesome. So, Mike, this week's question, which would you rather have in your Xbox Series X? Smaller space but faster load times via an SSD, or extra space such as 2 to 5 terabytes but slower load times via a traditional SSD or hard drive?
I guess probably the smaller space, faster load time, because internet speeds have gotten better. So, like, if I really wanted to play something, I could always re-download it. So I guess having more space is not as big of a deal. But there's definitely a tricky one. Yeah, I'll definitely stick with the smaller space and faster load times, just because I'm a creature of habit, and I am not someone who has to mix my palette up very much.
True.
I can play pretty much the same stuff all the time and not get bored. So I'm okay with, basically being stuck to a certain few games or whatever.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And to be honest, I would probably, even though I'm somebody who plays a ton of games, like a ton of different games, and always is trying to find different experiences to play, I would still probably take the faster load times with an SSD. And we're talking, when I say smaller space, that's less than 2 terabytes. We're talking a 1 terabyte SSD that these systems are coming standard with. I would probably still take that because I feel like I'm still playing a lot of games physically. Like, I'm still buying games physically, so it's more installing than downloading. I mean, they'll have, obviously, the patches and stuff, but those are usually traditionally less compared to the actual full game download that you're downloading, on release or whenever you buy the game. So I would probably still stay with that too, because if I need to uninstall it, it's just popping the disc back in. And the install times that we've been seeing from these impressions too seem to be really quick. It's like 6 minutes to completely install a game that's like 100 gigabytes or something like that. Like, it's crazy to like transfer as well from an SSD or from an external SSD to an internal one. Like, it's super fast. So I'm with you. I'd rather take that, but just because I still buy a lot of physical media because I like to collect the shit. But Mike, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you let people know where they can talk to you about all the shit we talked about today, whether it's the impressions of the Xbox Series X. Yeah, Series X, not Xbox One S. Got that right. I thought I messed it up there. Anyways, talking about that, we're talking about labor, the shitty things going on with labor in the games industry right now. Anything involving games, where can they find you? Talk about all that jazz we talked about today.
You can find me at Twitter on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, and the second O is an X. Or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier. And why don't you let everyone know where they can find you, Barry?
Oh, wait. You talking to me?
Yes. I mean, Travis, sorry.
I was going to say,
Barry is.
Who's Barry? Oh.
Yeah, I don't know.
Poor
Barry
guy.
Manilow, I guess.
Yeah, I heard he fucking drove a car off a cliff or something. I don't know. Anyways, as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms, including Twitter at Travelus_. That's TRAVLESS_. You'd also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travelus_. Same as Twitter. Don't gotta mess it up. And if you want to play some video games with me over on that there Xbox Live, you can do so by finding me just regular Travelus. It's TRAVLESS. No underscore. Like I said, one day, we're going to get all just unison. You can find me on everything at Travelus. That's it. One day. A guy can dream. Anyways, Mike, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you everyone so much for coming through, listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors, Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.